Here's my finished project, boys and girls. A modern landscape using chalk pastels showing warm color combinations and cool combinations. I bet you're going to do an amazing job. Hey boys and girls, today we're going to work on a landscape creation that is inspired by some of the artwork from Georgia O'Keeffe. I've probably shown you some images of Miss O'Keeffe's landscapes. She was a master with color and a painter. She would often do these bizarre shapes, so it didn't just look like a broccoli tree and a little rabbit and the moon in the sky, but there was an unusual composition that sort of almost confused us as we looked at it the first time. We call that an abstraction. And here we've seen, notice her color choices. She's got a lot of this charcoal gray and some lighter grays. She did add a little bit of red dirt and some yellow in this image. Here is another landscape, and obviously she has chosen warm colors for this image. The Red Hills and Bones is the name of this painting. But we're going to be using the idea of warm and cool color as we begin to create a modern landscape. Over the years, landscapes have been painted in a lot of different ways, but artists are often trying to express a very realistic picture of the wilderness. But that's not the only way it's done. Sometimes people go a little abnormal. They make some unusual choices to create a landscape that tells a different story, that enters into fantasy. And today we're learning about Georgia O'Keeffe. It's time to get started. The first thing we'll need is a black piece of paper and a black oil pastel. So we'll be drawing black on black. You won't see a really big line at first, but by the end of this project, you'll understand why. We need to make some kind of a hill on the bottom of our picture. I'm going to separate to where I have a sun in the sky, or maybe a moon, some mountains in the middle ground almost, and then some hills on the bottom of my paper. Hills, mountains, and sky. So I'm going to separate the mountains from the hills with a couple of arching lines. I'll start right in front on the bottom of my paper. That's where things are the nearest. And I'll just go freely with a curved line and another, maybe a wavy line. And then I'll stack a hill behind there with a curved line. If your line's too light, you can go back over it. That's just fine. And maybe one more little shape here. Now those are my hills in the foreground. I'm moving up now, up the paper in distance that's farther away. And I'll show space by making some mountains in the background. But these are mountains in a modern landscape, so they don't have to be super realistic with lots of trees on them. Instead, I'm going to do round-topped shapes, sort of like a gumdrop or something. And that's going to help show the style of modern landscape. Some of them might be wider than they are tall. And we want to show some overlapping too. So that means that my shape is going to sort of imagining behind this first one a different hill. And behind this there'll probably be one more. Maybe this one's the tallest one by a little. There. Now if you use your imagination, you can see how that hill would be overlapped by this mountain and this mountain. That's more than enough. I might not have left myself as much sky as you want to. And now I will create a moon. And that's going to be done with concentric circles. That means one circle and another circle around it and another circle around that, sort of like in a target. And this is my biggest space, so I think I'll create my moon right here with a little circle. And then around it, I am going off the edge of my paper. That's the plan. And now this time I'm going around that shape again. If I come to a mountain, I need to stop and skip and continue that circle. That shows that the sun or the moon is behind the mountains. The mountains are overlapping the moon. And so we want to show some skipping like I've done here to convince the viewer that the moon is far away and the mountains are near. One more time for me. I'm going to do one more concentric circle, and it might be easier for you to turn the paper like I just did. I think that's enough. Now we're going to transition to a new material. Something you haven't used before. In my bag here I have them. And these are chalk pastels. I've got my oil pastel, I'm finished with that for now, and I have chalk pastels in front of me. Chalk pastels are chalk, so they're very dusty and they'll get all over your hands if you're not careful. I'm going to organize my colors by warm colors and cool colors. If you want your picture to be a nighttime landscape, then this becomes the moon and you should use cool colors in the sky. If you want your picture to be a daytime picture, then you should use warm colors in the sky. Whichever color you choose for your sky, you need to do the opposite group for your land. I'm going to make a cool sky with a warm landscape. If you choose to do warm in the sky, then you need to have cool on the ground. But for me, I'm switching the idea here. I'm going to go ahead and do cool colors up top here. And I might start with a little white. And you can blend your colors a little bit too. So I'm going to have a blue with white for my moon. And I'm going to color thoroughly so that I can see no black paper underneath. So I'm taking the light blue and coloring right into the dark blue, just like you might mix colors with oil pastels. Bring that color in close here. And you'll discover this, that another way to blend with chalk pastels is by using your fingers. Now mine are obviously messy already, but I'm going to take one finger and just kind of gently blend my medium blue and my light blue. And that's got a pretty good effect, almost like paint. I tap my paper a little bit and you can see the dust falls off. This is a normal part of chalk pastels. There's a lot of chalk on the surface, but some of it is bound to shake off. If I was to press that against my clothes and rub it, you know that you'd have chalk on your clothes. So we have to treat it almost like a wet painting. In fact, some people who are pastel artists call them paintings even though it's not a liquid, it's a dry product. Anyway, this dust is going to be a problem if we don't work carefully. I would really appreciate it if you kept your dusting to a minimum. We can always shake off the excess dust in the garbage can rather than the tabletop. And if you're not being careful about where that dust goes, you'll get it on yourself, you'll get it on other people, and you'll get it all over our room. So please think before you act. Here is the favorite part of our landscape. Finishing touches are actually going to be the best part of it. We're going to use white, perhaps a little black, and then we'll return to our oil pastel for the finishing touches. I know about our light source and how that causes shadows to fall, so there'll be highlights and shadows in this creation. So I'm going to go ahead now with just a dash of white here and there. Oh, and I tried to wipe off my fingers a little bit. I'm adding just a bit of white to really make this picture pop. I did break an oil pastel just now. Sorry, a chalk pastel. That is normal. They are brittle. Don't do it on purpose. But there will be a little breakage. That's not that. And maybe a little black for my shadows. I've got a cool sky because I wanted this to be a nighttime picture. And I've got a warm ground so that I'm showing a knowledge of warm and cool. Kind of depends on how much you know about value and light sources on where you're going to put your shadows. But I know that my shadow happens on the opposite side of a form from the light source. So my moon is my light source. This little gumdrop mountain is my form, and it's facing the moon there, so there's the highlight, and on the opposite side is the shadow. This is how we create the illusion of 3 dimensions on a flat piece of paper, by using value, placement, and overlapping. Value means dark to light, placement means how high on the page, and overlapping means that some shapes are hidden behind the shapes that are in front of them. If I use too much black, I'm going to kill the color. All that bright color that I have on my picture will go away. So I'm only doing a touch of the black. And maybe I just want to add a little more highlight in the sky here, just a ring around the moon to make my picture a little more interesting. For my very last step, once I'm satisfied with my colors and blending, I'll return to the oil pastel and I will redo the lines I started out with. Be careful not to smear it with the edge of your hand. That is a very common mistake when you're doing pastel drawing, to rub your hand across it. So I tried to work from the top to the bottom as I drew so that my hand wasn't constantly going through dust.